My name's Caleb, and for most of my adult life, I've been the kind of guy who follows the rules. Steady job. Mortgage on a modest house. Married my college sweetheart. Nothing flashy, nothing chaotic. Just stable. That's how I liked it. Predictable. Safe. Brianna and I had been married 5 years, together for 9. We lived in a quiet neighborhood outside Chicago in one of those beige suburbs with clean sidewalks and year-round Christmas lights that nobody bothered to take down. It wasn't perfect, no marriages, but I thought we were solid. We had a rhythm, weekday routines, weekend brunches, spontaneous movie nights. She laughed at my bad jokes and I never missed her birthday. That had to count for something, right? She worked in HR at this mid-sized wellness tech company downtown. I didn't know much about it beyond the fact that her coworkers wore sneakers to board meetings and every month seemed to feature some kind of themed event, Mindfulness March, Self-Care September, things like that. It sounded like a dream job. She liked to remind me they had kombucha on tap in the break room and that their CEO insisted everyone disconnect at lunch. Anyway, that week she told me they were throwing a corporate party at the Kingrow Tower, one of the newer high-rises in the city. Glass and steel all the way up. She said it was strictly employees only, no partners, no plus ones. Some kind of exclusive, internal event. I wasn't offended or anything. Honestly, I was glad she was doing something social again. She'd been distant lately, more withdrawn than usual, and I figured maybe this would lift her spirits. Still, I wanted to do something for her. Nothing dramatic. Just something small to remind her I cared. So I ordered a bouquet of sunflowers, her favorite, and wrote a little card, "In a room full of people, I hope tonight you still feel seen. I love you, see?" Cheesy, sure, but it was genuine. She loved handwritten notes. At least, she used to. I arranged for the bouquet to be delivered to the front desk at Kingrow Tower just after the party started. But as I was driving home that night, something pulled at me. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe I was bored. Or maybe a small part of me already sensed something was off. I don't know. Either way, I decided to drop the flowers off myself just to add a personal touch. I figured I'd say a quick hello to the receptionist, hand her the arrangement, and be on my way before Brianna ever knew. I parked in one of those overpriced underground garages and rode the elevator up to the lobby. The place was polished, marble floors, glass art installations, a lobby scent that probably had its own trademark. I walked up to the front desk with the flowers in hand and gave the receptionist a polite smile. "Hi there, I'm just dropping these off for someone attending the corporate event upstairs." "Brianna Keller?" "She works in HR." The receptionist's eyes flicked to her screen, then back up at me with a slight frown. "She's already been checked in." "Oh," I said, a little surprised. "Do you know what floor the party's on?" She said 16. She shook her head. "The check-in for the event is on 16, yes. But she was escorted to a private suite on 25. I blinked. "Sorry, 25? "Yes, that's a restricted area. Only executive access." My stomach tightened. "Are you sure?" "Brianna's not in executive management." She gave a small, polite shrug. "All I can tell you is she was on the list for the 25th floor and had someone escort her up." The words hit harder than I expected. For a moment I just stood there, the flowers suddenly feeling heavier in my hand. I mumbled a thank you, left the bouquet with the receptionist, and walked out. The elevator ride down was quiet, just me and the soft hum of the cables. I stared at the reflection of myself in the mirrored wall, trying to shake off this gnawing feeling in my gut. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe her team was getting some kind of special recognition. But that didn't explain the lie. She specifically told me she'd be in the 16th floor conference hall with the girls from her department. That was her exact wording. Why say that if it wasn't true? When I stepped outside, the night air hit me like a slap, cold, sharp, sobering. I stood there on the sidewalk for a minute, watching people filter in and out of the building. Some were laughing. Others looked exhausted. No one seemed out of place. But I felt like I was floating, untethered. I started walking toward my car but ended up taking the long way around the block. I told myself I was just getting some fresh air, but really I needed time. Time to try and quiet that voice in the back of my mind that kept whispering things I didn't want to hear. What was she doing on the 25th floor? Why didn't she mention it? Who was the escort? The ride home was a blur. I didn't even remember backing out of the garage or merging onto the freeway. I just remember the silence and the way my hands kept tightening around the steering wheel. When I finally pulled into the driveway, the house looked normal. Lights off. Curtains drawn. Nothing out of place. But as I stepped inside, that hollow feeling returned. Like something was missing and I couldn't name it yet. I tried to brush it off. Told myself I was being paranoid. Told myself maybe there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe they needed her help with something upstairs. Maybe she didn't think it mattered. But deep down I knew something wasn't right. The way the receptionist had said escort. The way she looked at me like she was about to say more but didn't. That night, I didn't text Brianna. Didn't call. I just sat on the edge of our bed in the dark, staring at her pillow. Wondering. The truth is, I didn't want to believe it. But I knew something had shifted. Something was already broken. I just hadn't seen the cracks until now. And once you start looking for them, you see them everywhere. The next morning, Brianna came home around 9 a.m., makeup cleaned off, hair tied back, sunglasses still on indoors. She smiled like everything was normal. Said the party had gone late and she crashed at her coworker Dana's place to avoid driving tired. I nodded. Didn't question it. Not out loud. But inside? That was the moment something changed. I didn't kiss her good morning. Didn't offer coffee like I usually did. I just watched her, really watched her, as she poured cereal and scrolled her phone like nothing had happened. And for the first time I noticed how practiced it all looked. Like a performance. That afternoon, while she was in the shower, I stood in the hallway staring at her purse. I didn't open it. Didn't need to. Just the fact that I was tempted to? That was new. That wasn't us. Or at least, it hadn't been. I kept telling myself I was overreacting. One weird night doesn't mean betrayal. One lie doesn't equal an affair. But the truth was, this hadn't started last night. I just hadn't seen it clearly until now. In the weeks leading up to that party, little things had been piling up. Quiet red flags I'd ignored. Like how Brianna used to call me on her way home almost every day. We'd chat about nothing, traffic, dinner, whatever her boss said that annoyed her. But lately, the calls had stopped. Instead, I'd get texts. Short ones. Busy. Driving. Talk later. And later never came. Her phone habits changed too. She used to leave it face up on the couch or charging on the counter. Now it was always flipped over, always on silent. If I walked into the room mid-conversation, she'd lower her voice, press the power button, or turn her back. I remember one night in particular, a Thursday. She came home late and claimed she'd gone to a team dinner after a department training. I didn't think much of it at the time. But the next day, someone from her office posted a photo of the dinner on social media. Group SH*T, 10 people. Everyone smiling, arms around shoulders, half-eaten appetizers on the table. But Brianna wasn't in it. When I asked her about it casually, she said she must have stepped out when the picture was taken. I wanted to believe her. But her eyes flickered for just a second when she said it, like she wasn't sure which lie she'd told last. Then there was the family dinner. Last Sunday. My parents had come over and Brianna spent the whole evening glued to her phone. She smiled at it like it was telling better jokes than we were. Whenever I leaned in to look, she tilted the screen away. She laughed once, really laughed at a message. Then caught herself. Set the phone down. Looked at me like I might ask a question. I didn't. I should have. And there were other signs. Subtle, but once you start seeing them, you can't unsee them. Her wardrobe shifted. Less casual, more form-fitting. Even on weekends. She started wearing perfume to work again, something she hadn't done since the early days of her job. At first, I thought maybe she was trying to reignite something between us. But when I leaned in one night and told her she smelled amazing, she barely responded. Just nodded. Kept scrolling. Then came the late meetings. Suddenly, she had them every week. She'd text me at 6 or 7 saying something came up, last-minute scheduling, department issues, client calls. But HR doesn't do client calls. Not at that hour. The first time it happened, I didn't think twice. The second time, I got takeout and waited. The third, I sat by the window watching cars pass, wondering which one might be hers. By the fifth time, I'd stopped waiting altogether. I remember this one night, maybe 2 weeks before the Kingrow party, she came home around 10 p.m., flustered. Hair messed up from the wind, she said. Jacket wrinkled from being in the back seat of a coworker's car, she added. But her lipstick was perfect. And the back of her blouse had a faint crease like someone had gripped it. I noticed it. She didn't. At the time, I told myself I was crazy. That I was seeing things because I was tired, or bored, or insecure. I didn't want to become that guy, the paranoid husband, checking receipts and counting miles on the odometer. But after the Kingrow Tower, after the 25th floor, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I started keeping mental notes. Not full-on stalking her or anything. Just watching. Observing. Looking for patterns. And they were there. Like how she'd smile at a text and instantly lock the screen. Or how she started changing her phone password every few days. Or how she stopped sharing her calendar with me, something we used to do for fun, to plan weekend stuff. And her stories? They never quite lined up. One day she was going to a wine bar with her coworkers. The next, she'd say they were at a Mexican place. Little contradictions. Easy to overlook if you weren't paying attention. But I was. Even her car started to smell different. Not bad, just not familiar. A mix of cologne and mint gum. The kind of smell that wasn't hers and definitely wasn't mine. And there was this one voicemail. She didn't know I heard it. She left her phone on the table while she was in the shower and I was in the kitchen when it buzzed. Just a 5-second clip from someone with a deep voice and a confident tone. Missed you today. Call me if you get a chance. No name. No context. She deleted it before I could see more. But I remembered the voice. And I remembered how she lied about staying homesick that day. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I didn't want to accuse her of something I couldn't prove. I still held on to this hope, maybe false, that I was wrong. That I was connecting dots that weren't meant to connect. That I was just hurt by the shift in our relationship, not betrayed by it. But there's a moment, a line you cross, where suspicion stops being a whisper and becomes a roar. And after that, it's like trying to unhear thunder. You can't. You just brace for the storm. And somewhere deep down, I already knew the truth was bigger than I was ready to handle. There's something strange about being proven right when you wish more than anything that you were wrong. It happened late on a Tuesday. Brianna had gone to bed early, headache, she said. But when I came upstairs an hour later, the room was empty. Her phone was gone, the bed untouched. I told myself she might be in the bathroom, but I already knew she wasn't. I stood there in the doorway longer than I should have, just looking at the neatly tucked sheets. Like I needed one more second to lie to myself before things crossed a point of no return. Then I went downstairs and sat in the garage. We used the garage mostly for storage, holiday decorations, old furniture, random boxes we were too lazy to unpack. I hadn't cleaned it in a while. Honestly, I didn't even know why I walked in there. Maybe I just needed to be somewhere that didn't smell like her shampoo. That's when I saw it. On the third shelf behind a half-open plastic bin of Christmas lights. Her old tablet. She told me she lost it months ago, left it in a cab after a company outing. At the time, I believed her. I even offered to buy her a new one, but she brushed it off, said she didn't need it anymore. But here it was. Not lost. Not broken. Just hidden. I picked it up slowly, like it might burn me. The screen lit up with a gentle tap, no password. Just, open. And maybe I should have stopped there. Maybe I should have put it down and walked away, still clinging to the scraps of doubt I had left. But I didn't. I opened the gallery. At first, it was innocent, old selfies, birthday parties, sunsets. Then a folder named Moments. The first image stopped me cold. It was from the Kinggrow Tower party. I recognized the room. High ceilings, string lights, white orchids on glass tables. There was Brianna, not with her department friends like she'd claimed, but seated on the lap of a man in a blue suit, tucked away behind a row of sheer white curtains. He had his arm around her waist and she was laughing, head tilted back. Her dress was the same one she wore out that night. The moment looked too an asterisk made to be anything casual. I scrolled again. A video. Them in an elevator, same man. His hand on her neck. Her back pressed to the mirrored wall. She wasn't pushing him away. The audio was muffled, but her giggle was unmistakable. I paused it. Sat there, barely breathing. I didn't know what I was waiting for. Maybe for her to pull away in the video. Maybe for a punchline that would explain everything. But it didn't come. I kept scrolling. Screensh asterisk TS of chats. Messages. Voice notes. One message read. Everything's fine with my husband. He didn't notice anything. You though, you're fire. There was a voice memo too. I almost didn't press play. But my thumb moved before I could stop it. Her voice. Soft. Casual. Familiar. Last night was incredible. I swear Caleb has no clue. He still thinks I was with the girls. I know I said I'd pull back, but it's hard. You make it hard. She laughed at the end. A laugh I used to think was just for me. I didn't even realize I was crying until the screen blurred. I wiped my eyes and leaned back against a stack of boxes, letting the silence swallow me. The strange thing is, I didn't feel rage. Not at first. I felt embarrassed. Hollow. Like the inside of my chest had been scooped out with a dull spoon. I kept hearing her voice in that message. Not just what she said, but how easily she said it. Like she'd rehearsed it. Like lying to me had become second nature. And then came the real sting, the realization that she wasn't just cheating, she was living a second life. One where I was the background character. My husband, like some distant figure in a sitcom she half-watched while getting dressed for someone else. I don't know how long I sat there. Probably over an hour. Long enough for the garage to grow cold. Long enough to feel the ache set into my hands from holding the tablet so tight. Eventually, I stood up, walked back into the house. Everything looked the same, but it wasn't. The hallway felt narrower, the lights dimmer, the air thicker. Brianna was in bed by the time I made it upstairs. She pretended to be asleep, I could tell by her breathing. Slow, deliberate, like someone trying too hard to look peaceful. I just stood in the doorway and watched her for a minute. Not in a creepy way. Just to see her. As she was. The stranger sleeping in my bed. And I felt this sharp, undeniable thing settle into place. I didn't know her anymore. Not really. I thought about waking her up. Confronting her right then and there. But what would that have accomplished? More lies? More crocodile tears? A carefully rehearsed apology? No. I needed space to think. To plan. To process. So I said nothing. Instead, I backed out of the room quietly and sat on the living room couch, staring at the TV without turning it on. The screen reflected the soft glow of the hallway light, and I could see my own reflection, tired, sunken, older than I'd felt just a few hours earlier. I pulled out my phone and opened a new email draft. Not to her. Not to her lover. Just to myself. A journal entry, I guess. I started listing everything I found on the tablet. I wanted to remember it clearly, no emotions, just facts. Because I knew the mind plays tricks, especially when your heart's involved. I couldn't afford to doubt what I'd seen. And as I typed, one sentence kept echoing in my mind. She hid it. On purpose. This wasn't a slip-up. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It was planned. Protected. Preserved. She didn't want me to know, not because she regretted it, but because it was easier to keep me in the dark. I wasn't a partner to her anymore. I was a placeholder. And that's when the grief turned into something sharper. Not anger, not yet. Just cold clarity. I backed up every file from that tablet onto a hard drive. Uploaded it to a private folder in the cloud. Created a new email address, one she didn't know about, and sent it all there. For safekeeping. Because I knew this wasn't over. Not even close. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a minute. I just sat in the dark, in the corner of the living room, watching shadows crawl across the walls as the hours passed. At some point, I heard Brianna get up to use the bathroom. She never noticed me downstairs, or if she did, she didn't care enough to ask why I wasn't in bed. That detail stuck with me. Around 5 a.m. I got up, poured myself some cold coffee from the pot she'd brewed yesterday, and sat down at the dining table. That's when it hit me, if I kept waiting for her to fix this, I'd be waiting forever. So I made a decision. No more wishful thinking. No more asking questions I already knew the answers to. If she could build a life behind my back, I could build a plan in front of hers, quietly, deliberately, piece by piece. I started by cataloging everything I had. I rewatched the elevator video from the tablet. Paused it. Zoomed in. Took screenshot *TS. I captured the name tag barely visible on the man's lanyard. Lucas R. Devlin. The name meant nothing to me then, but it would. I saved all the photos and messages onto a USB drive. Then 2 more, just in case. One went into a safety deposit box at my credit union that afternoon. The second I tucked into the lining of my navy suit jacket, the one I only wore to weddings and funerals. Then I downloaded an automatic call recorder onto my phone. Discreet, hidden in the background. I didn't plan to bait her into anything. But if she slipped, and she would, I'd have the words. By noon that day, I had set up a private email account using a name that couldn't be traced to me. I uploaded everything to cloud storage. Then I changed the passwords on my main bank account. Not to lock her out, not yet, but to see if she noticed. She didn't. That told me more than I expected. I spent the next few evenings combing through her recent bank activity. She rarely used her card for anything personal. Everything was either cash or Venmo. But one charge stood out. A booking at the Meridian Spa on a random Tuesday night. She said she was working late that day. The charge didn't show up until after 9:30 p.m. That's not how spa appointments work. Another one. A rideshare trip from downtown to a residential condo complex on the north side. No return trip. She must have had someone drop her off. Each line item painted a picture. Nothing stood out by itself, but stacked together, it told the story she never would. And the final puzzle piece? Her group chat with the girls. I'd never been interested in snooping. But now I was searching for patterns. I pulled up messages from months back on her synced laptop. The one she forgot was still linked to our home Wi-Fi. I typed keywords into the search bar. One message from her friend Melissa hit me square in the chest. Girl, are you sure Caleb's not catching on? To which Brianna replied, please, He's basically reliable wallpaper. That was the moment I stopped feeling heartbroken. Not because it didn't hurt, it did, but because the hurt began to calcify into something harder. Something steady. I closed the laptop, walked into the kitchen, stared at the counter where we used to make coffee side by side. Same house, same lighting, same 2 mugs. Everything else had changed. I didn't confront her. Not yet. There's something powerful in silence, the way it makes liars nervous. If she thought I was oblivious, she'd get sloppy. That weekend, I told her I was going to help my brother with yard work. Instead, I drove to a quiet little law office I'd found online. No frills. Just good reviews and a lawyer who called herself ruthless in court and polite in person. That worked for me. Her name was Dana. Late 40s, sharp blazer, no small talk. I liked her immediately. I want to divorce my wife, I said simply. But I want to do it on my terms. She leaned forward. Is there an affair involved? I handed her the USB drive. She plugged it in, watched the elevator video without blinking, then nodded. Yes, there will be. We spent an hour sketching out the outline. Property division, spousal support contingencies, how to protect my premarital savings. She asked questions I hadn't thought to prepare for, and helped me plan for ones I didn't want to. Before I left, she handed me a thick folder with post-it tabs and a checklist. When you're ready to serve her, bring this back filled out. In the meantime, stay calm. Don't tip her off. I nodded. That evening, I sat across from Brianna at the dinner table while she told me about some HR reshuffling at work. She mentioned a new guy who transferred in from another office. Said his name was Lucas. That he was annoying. Loud. Thought he was funnier than he was. I nodded. That was the first time I realized she was starting to create distance between them. In her words, at least. Trying to get ahead of the fallout before it ever happened. It almost impressed me. I didn't flinch. Just said, "Work sounds exhausting lately," and cleared the dishes. The next morning, I drafted an email to her supervisor. Polite, clean, not accusatory. Just a statement of facts, attached with select screenshots. Only the ones that showed her engaging in personal conduct during company-sanctioned hours, using corporate transportation, drinking in an executive lounge she had no clearance for. The subject line? Use of company resources, employee concern. I didn't sign my name. Let them figure out the rest. I didn't press send right away. I sat with it for a moment, hand hovering over the trackpad, waiting to see if anything inside me would stop me. Nothing did, so I sent it. Then I shut the laptop and poured myself another cup of coffee. I was no longer the guy sitting in the garage crying over an unlocked tablet. I was the man laying bricks for the exit path. And she didn't even know the door was being built. It started the next day. Brianna came home early, way early. I heard the garage door open before 3 p.m., which never happened. When I looked up from the couch, she walked in holding a cardboard box. The kind you get from HR when they don't want to waste time with goodbyes. Her coat was unbuttoned, her hair a little frizzy from the wind, but her face, that told me everything. Flushed, tense, like someone who'd just been hit with a consequence she never saw coming. She didn't say anything right away. Just stood there in the foyer like she was waiting for a cue, like she had to figure out who she needed to be in that moment, the innocent wife, the misunderstood employee, or the victim of office politics. I didn't help her decide. Everything okay? I asked without emotion, flipping the TV volume down but not off. She blinked, set the box on the entryway bench and muttered, "I got let go." No shock in her voice. Just bitterness. Like she thought it was unfair. I nodded slowly. "I'm sorry to hear that." She looked at me, probably expecting follow-up questions. I gave her none. Instead, I turned my attention back to the screen and she disappeared into the hallway like a shadow slipping behind a curtain. And just like that, the first domino fell. I waited an hour. Let her stew in the silence. Let her wonder what I knew, if anything. Let her sit with the thought that maybe, just maybe, the game she was playing was no longer under her control. Then, when the sun dipped low enough to cast long shadows across the kitchen, I walked upstairs and came back down with a folder. Not a manila one. This was leather-bound. Clean. Deliberate. I placed it on the table while she was reheating leftovers she hadn't even made. She turned when she heard the soft thump of it hitting the wood. "What's that?" Divorce, I said plainly. All the paperwork's in there. Already signed on my end. Her jaw tightened. She didn't move toward it. Just stared at it like it was radioactive. No discussion? She asked. I shook my head. Not unless you want everyone, your job, your friends, maybe even your new boyfriend, to see what's on that USB drive. Her expression cracked, just for a second. Not in fear. Not in guilt. In panic. Because that was the first time she realized I wasn't bluffing. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't threaten. Just let the sentence hang in the air like smoke from a match. You can sign and leave quietly, I added. Or you can drag this out and find out how fast your reputation can disappear. She moved slowly toward the table, fingertips brushing the cover of the folder. Then she pulled her hand back like it burned. You planned this. It wasn't a question. I nodded. Just like you planned your Friday nights. She looked down. No denial. No gaslighting. Just the quiet admission of someone who'd been cornered without realizing she'd walked into a trap. I stood up, not waiting for more. Walked to the sink. Washed my hands like I was cleaning off something sticky. Behind me, she sank into the kitchen chair, still staring at the folder. And for the first time in this whole ordeal, I saw something on her face I hadn't seen in months. Defeat. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies. Not tears or begging or dramatic monologues. Just that dawning, quiet understanding that she had finally lost something and couldn't fix it. The rest of the night passed like we were strangers sharing a motel room. She sat in silence. I scrolled through my phone. The cat, somehow sensing everything, avoided us both. By midnight, the folder was gone from the table. I didn't ask where she put it. I didn't care. She hadn't signed yet, but she would. I knew she would. The next morning, I checked the cloud drive. No new logins. No attempts to delete anything. I smiled to myself. She was still figuring out how deep the water was. Still hoping the undertow wasn't strong enough to pull her under. I started to see subtle changes in her. She wore my old t-shirts around the house, ones she never touched before. Made coffee for me in the morning the way I used to make it for her. Cleaned the counters twice in one day as if effort now could erase what she'd done. But the truth? The gap between us wasn't about dirty dishes or missed calls anymore. It was trust, and that wasn't something you could scrub back into existence. That week, the silence in the house thickened. It wasn't tension anymore. It was absence. Like we were both mourning something that had already died but hadn't been buried yet. Even her friends started disappearing. I noticed her social media started to thin out, photos archived, comments deleted. One day she spent 2 hours on her phone, face pale, scrolling with this urgent look like she was chasing a version of herself that had already vanished. The fallout had big asterisk N. Melissa, the same friend who once called me husband goals at game night, messaged me out of the blue. I didn't know, Caleb. I'm so sorry. That was all she wrote. Short. Honest. Enough. The second domino. Then came the knock at the door. 2 days after the papers were dropped, Brianna called the police. Claimed I was pressuring her. I expected it or something like it. Desperation wears many faces. The officer came in, polite but firm. Asked if we could sit and talk. I didn't protest. I brought out the tablet. The photos. The voice notes. He reviewed them in silence. Nodded once. Closed the file. Sir, he said, almost tiredly, it's clear you're not the threat in this household. 10 minutes later, he left. No report filed. No further action. She didn't speak the rest of the night. And that's when I realized she had no plan. She had her secrets, her games, her flings, but no strategy for what happened when it all came crashing down. She'd built a second life on scaffolding, and now that I kicked it out from under her, all she had was confusion. Confusion and a man across the table who no longer flinched when she cried. The days that followed weren't loud. They were quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you notice every creak in the floorboards, every sigh from the other side of the house. Brianna lingered like a ghost in the halls, wearing my old t-shirts like they might pull her back into the life she'd already shattered. She kept up the performance. Cleaned, folded laundry, even asked if I wanted anything from the store. I didn't respond. Not to be cruel, I just had nothing left to offer. Whatever we were, it wasn't a marriage anymore. It was two people playing house inside the shell of something that used to feel like home. The unraveling reached outside our walls. Her Instagram page, once packed with selfies and brunch photos, started disappearing post by post. Her friends, the ones who once hyped her in the comments, began unfollowing. And then, the real dagger, Melissa texted again. I didn't know about him. I thought she was just venting. I had no idea it went that far. Turns out Melissa had been her cover story, the friend she was always supposedly with. And now even she was done lying for her. 2 days later, Brianna tried one last move. She called the cops. Said I was pressuring her emotionally, legally. But when the officer sat down and I showed him everything, the messages, the audio, the gallery folder I'd labeled foreclosure, he gave her a single look. Cold. Disappointed. Ma'am, he said flatly, this man hasn't threatened you. He's just prepared. She didn't call again after that. And for the first time I watched her sit on the couch and realize what she'd truly lost. Not just the job. Or the privacy. But the narrative. She wasn't the victim. She was the story. I moved out 2 weeks later. Small apartment. First floor. A corner unit with no memories. No framed wedding photos, no scented candles, no empty shoes by the door. Just clean floors, quiet mornings, and air that felt mine again. The first few nights were strange. Not painful, just unfamiliar. Like I'd left behind